Okay, before we continue now with implementing our functions and our front end, I want to take a moment and have a look at how events are exactly working and how we can use them in our code. As this is mostly the part which is confusing most of the people, I want to take this lecture and the next lecture just to show you exactly how events are working. Now, in general, you have two options here. The one is you can watch for events, and if you watch for events in your JavaScript, then the events are getting updated. So it's more a polling onto the blockchain node to see if there is something new. On the other hand, you can also get events, and that's a one-time operation. It will just have a look if there were events within a certain block range, and it will give you an array of events. You can also filter for events. You can search for specific events or by a block number, and if you search for specific events, you can also search for certain arguments. Now, in the Metacoin example that is provided by Truffle, we have one event that's called transfer. So the event name is transfer, and if you have a look at the code, which we will do later, you can see the event transfer. It has an address which is indexed from, an address indexed to, and a value. So it has two indexed fields. One is from and one is to. And those are very important because you can always filter events by those fields that are indexed. And this is how the Web3.js filtering is working. On the one hand side, you can either look for all events. So if you have, for example, a Metacoin instance, you can retrieve all events by calling all events. Or you can get a specific event, and then you just give it the event name. If you have the Metacoin instance or an instance of your contract, you can just type in .transfer, and both of them will return you an events object. And from there, you can call either .get or .watch. And then you get either an array of events or you watch for events happening. In the example of all events, you can call Metacoin instance.allEvents, and then there is a configuration object which can filter by certain attributes. For example, you can say, I want to have all events from my first block to my last block, and then get. And this one will call a function, an arrow first function, and it will give you an array of events. This will give you all events that happen since the creation of the contract, because it starts from the first block and goes to the last block. Also good to know is if you call the get function, it's a one-time operation. This one will not update itself if new events are being fired. In order to get the newest events, if you have the get function, you have to reload the website. On the opposite is the watch function, which has the same configuration object here, .watch. And this one will not give you an array of events, it will give you one event after the other. So if there is 1,000 events already being fired by the Metacoin instance, the watch from the first block to the last block will call this function 1,000 times. So it gives you one event at a time. And good to know, the watch function will make the polling to the blockchain node, and it will update itself. So it will call again this function if a new event is fired. To my best knowledge, I haven't found a way to filter by any event properties. Like in our example, the transfer event has the to and the from fields, which are indexed. I haven't found a way to filter the properties with all events, but definitely it's possible if we have a look at a single event. So if you, for example, just want to have a single event, and in our case it's the transfer event, then you have this additional configuration parameter, which is an object where you can filter for some arguments, in addition to the general configuration options for from block and to block. And in this case, for example, you can go ahead and filter for the from field from your event, and then you can just give it a value. For example, I want to have all my transfer events which were fired with a from field from my first account in my account list. Well, this one will give you all the transfer events from the first block to the last block. And again, it will give you an array of events. Also, with the get function, it will not update itself as new events occur. So it's not a polling, it's really a one-time operation. On the other hand, with the watch function, you can do exactly the same. You have one event with additional parameters, which you can filter for, and then watch. And this one will give you one event after the other. And obviously it will start a polling. Now we're gonna have a look at a practical example. I will just take the standard Webpack example because it's for me the fastest to deploy. It comes with the standard MetaCoin, and I would just add a few functions to observe events and show you the difference between get and watch and a single event and all events. I will do this in Geth because I personally found that if I try to run these examples with the test RPC, the test RPC most likely forgets, under quotes, forgets my old events. So it's very bad to use the test RPC for showing how events work. But with a Geth and with a private node, I would just take it and connect Mist to it. And in the next lecture anyway, we will see how that works.